Coming in hot to give you our hot takes on all the latest mental health news.
From headlines and memes to developments and breakthroughs.
We go into this show blind with the hopes of learning something new.
Before sharing some bunny hugs.
And leaving with our eyes wide open. I'm Nick.
And I'm Todd. And this is Mental Health Headline Hot Takes.
We're glad you're here. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Mental Health Headline Hot Takes. I'm Nick and this is Todd. And we are spinning the wheel to make the deal on who goes first. Stop.
Todd's choice.
Todd's choice.
It always lands on me.
Always lands on you every time. It's rigged.
I went first last time, so you go ahead, sir.
All right. So my article today, this is a pretty dense article, and I've done what I think is a good job to break it down, but I highly recommend you read this article. It's linked to CNN, but it's on News Hub, which is there are 6 subtypes of depression study finds, and here's why this matters. So this is interesting to me because I've always kind of felt like there's this idea that depression is a one size fits all take. And I've never really felt that way because I think there's like situational depression, which I think a lot of people would agree upon. And then there's, I guess regular depression or other depression that just kind of lingers there and is always there. And like physiological, that's a better way to put it. Physiological depression. But identifying these 6 types and reading through this article, I mean, it's dense. It's really dense. It's very much into what's happening in the brain regions and stuff. But I thought I could try and simplify it for everyone and see if it resonates because this is the first study of this kind that has identified these various subsets of depression. And of course, they're recommending more studies. And there isn't really a way to identify what is going on in a wide range of people's brains to really link which type of depression you have. We don't have tests for that yet. So I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but it's interesting. There's 6 types. So there's the first type is characterized by, and these are not in any order of importance or anything like that, but the first one was characterized by hyperactivity in cognitive regions, which is what's giving people anxiety symptoms, negative bias symptoms, threat dysregulation, and other types of, really, really kind of like mismanaging an actual situation, in your mind, which is interesting, right? Because you've got hyperactivity, you're like overthinking these things. And when there are negative biases and stuff like that, you can see how that would amplify such angst or anxiety.
So I read this article just by chance, and that first one sounds so much like ADHD and like the symptoms I have with ADHD. I was like, I totally relate with this one.
See, that's interesting because I classified this as more anxiety, and there was another one that I classified as ADHD. So that's interesting. Okay. Because this one to me, it's like,
because there's different kinds of ADHD too, I guess.
Of course there is. Of course there is.
Yeah.
But just like having like the threat dysregulation and the negative bias is like overthinking all of these things. That was my take, but no, that's interesting. I can see that too. So another biotype was higher levels of brain connectivity in the 3 regions that are associated with depression and problem solving. So I think that that's interesting, right? Because it's someone who's like thinking about problem solving, but not maybe being able to problem solve. So that makes them depressed. And that's one of the things that gets me when I think about, as we talked about in the last episode, when I think about how big some of these problems are and how I can't really solve them. And that kind of makes me depressed and a nihilist. So that's one that one I kind of related with a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the third one, which is lower levels of activity in the brain circuit that manages attention. So this is the one that made me think of ADHD because this is the one where people struggle doing things that require sustained attention. Geez, I can speak English. And they tend to make a lot more mistakes when they're doing things that require more time and effort. So that was the one that kind of made me think a little bit about ADHD because you just don't want to be doing it, right?
Right. Well, it depends on the task with ADHD because you can hyper focus on stuff you really like doing. It's the stuff you are like forced to do that you don't like doing that distractions are very easy. But But yeah, I'm sure there's lots of crossover with these two. And
well, the interesting thing with this one too is it had less of a chance of improving with therapy. That's the other piece that made me think, oh, that could be not that I'm sure there's therapy that helps ADHD too.
There is. Yeah,
absolutely. But I thought that was an interesting piece. I should have shared that too. That made me think,
So is it meds with this one then?
So this is the stuff that they don't know. They have to explore this. They have some of this in their article. The next one is characterized by high emotional reactivity, where the brain and the different parts of the brain in this group are affected by emotional inputs like people's emotions or people's facial expressions. So this one's more of like you're reacting to other people. So it's like if someone's mad at you, it makes you depressed. If someone makes a weird facial expression or someone else's emotions, they're much more affecting your mood. So like if you're around more negative people, you're more likely to be depressed in this type.
I wonder if that has more to do with like personality disorders or trauma. Or,
I was thinking that.
You know what I mean? You could almost like
you'd be a people pleaser.
Right. And just
where does that? That comes from perfectionism, which comes from your childhood trauma, right? It's Thought that was interesting.
Neat.
Yeah.
Keep going. I'm liking this.
Yeah. Another biotype associated with lower activity in the cognitive regions and less connectivity in emotional regions, meaning these participants have difficulty responding to cognitive information and regulating negative emotions. So this one made me think kind of again of like anxiety, where you're always thinking about what could possibly happen, what could possibly go wrong, and then those just overtake everything else. This one is also super relatable to me when I was younger, because I had so many. I mean, every emotion I had was negative when I was probably a teen and in my 20s. Like it was all like nothing good ever happened. It was, I mean, I would probably be able to find. I would just be depressed on Christmas morning kind of things as a younger person. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that one was interesting.
Was that from trauma or DNA or a little both? Nature or nurture? Wow. Then, oh my God. Now we're dive deeping.
Yeah. It's probably all of it. Yeah. I didn't have, my parents, again, they did the best they could, but like looking back, like I took on a lot alone as a kid. So that's a, when you're a kid and you're trying to like take on all this stuff I put on myself mostly, but just wasn't getting elsewhere. So it is kind of like becomes very negative because you have even less power as a kid to do anything. You know what I mean?
So it's like this weird learned behavior that you can't shake.
Exactly. Now, the interesting thing is these last two that we've talked about, they didn't respond to medications or therapy, which means we need to like explore newer treatments for that, because current treatments aren't working at all or aren't really working for those two, which is the other people's emotions or vitamin D. There you go.
Exercise and vitamin D.
Yeah. And then the last one, didn't differ from the brain scans of people without depression. And this one could be an underlying depression that hasn't really been entirely understood. Because if you have the exact same brain as a non-depressed person, there's something kind of underneath that needs to be explored as to why one person with those brain scans in the same regions don't have depression as another person. So there needs to be other things going on there. And that makes me think again, like, oh, maybe there's a nature versus nurture thing there, that your brain's identical, but maybe there's something else. But then what does that even mean? So I think this, the output from this study is that this is the first of its kind. There's a lot more studying that needs to be done. And then on top of that, there also needs to be a lot more research into treatment options for people that are experiencing different kinds. But before we even do that, you've got to figure out how to test these and diagnose which type of depression, if they continue to study it and realize that this is actually
useful,
empirically true, that there's 6 different types.
I say just cheer up.
Yeah. Have you tried
chin up,
exercising? Buddy. Have you tried? Yeah.
I mean, that stuff does help, but
it does. It
Yeah.
100% does. But people that say it don't understand.
Well, that's fascinating. I did, like I said, I read the article, but it is very in depth. So I got about a third of the way through. To be honest with you. So
no, I mean, I read it and I was like, what? And so I had to like copy out the 6 things and then like kind of put some notes with them so that I felt like I could even kind of gather my thoughts. So I should have just given it to ChatGPT and said, summarize these findings for me.
For an AI hater, you know how to use it.
I use it to supplement. I don't use it to, because like a lot of the stuff it does is stuff I like to do. Right. So I don't, but I think everyone should probably be using it at some point.
I'm just teasing you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my story, it is, these are the most stressful cities for commuters, data shows. So this is from Jim Gorzalani with Forbes magazine. So there's a whole thing before they get into the cities about how mental health and stress and how commuting can be a huge stress contribute. What am I trying to say? A stressor. And if you already had a bad day at work and then you're trying to commute and all this stuff. So
that's why I don't have a car.
Oh. And do you work from home though, right? Most part?
Yeah. I had too much road rage.
Too.
Like I just hate being in a car in general.
Right. They talk about road rage a bit, but I just more or less just wanted to give some of the cities. So these are the most stressful commutes in the US. Number 1, LA. I don't think that's any big surprise. 2, San Francisco. 3, New York. 4, Miami. 5, Philadelphia. And 6, Boston.
Bullshit. Chicago.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. But anyway, continue.
This was a study out of a university in Montreal, actually, but this is the worst cities outside the US for commuters. Number 1 is London, 2, Paris, 3, Cardiff, Wales, 4, Rome, 5, Glasgow, Scotland, 6, Istanbul, and 7, Bristol, England. So, yeah, if you live in any of those cities, work from home if you can. And then they have a list of the least stressful cities in the world. Well, they don't have the least stressful ones in the US. They just have the least stressful ones outside the US. But anyway, number 1 is Stockholm, Sweden. 2, Berlin. 3, Toronto, which surprises me. I've been to Toronto, and it's like, okay, if you say so. Next is Montreal, Canada. Sydney, Australia. Brussels, Leeds, England. Edinburgh, Scotland. Manchester, England. And Dublin, Ireland. So those are the least stressful cities outside the US. So, but you know what? I grew up in a very small town. I'm moving. Well, I don't know if you can see in the background, but my studio's a mess because we're in the middle of moving. The city I'm moving to, it's like a small city. It's easy to get around. I still hate commuting. It doesn't matter how small or easy it is to get around. I'm like you.
I know, it's brutal.
Go, move. Or, it took me 10 minutes to get home today. Oh my God, But it's funny. I think that's what road rage is like you just want to go from
teleportation would be my superpower. I always say like it would be teleportation so I don't have to commute.
I want to get to my safe space now. And yeah. Some people like commuting. My sister loved it. She like going from her small town to her city, but she was a young mother, had kids and stuff. This was
peaceful time for her.
It was. That's exactly. She would decompress and just chill out, listen to some tunes. Once she was on the highway, but in the city, not so much. But yeah, so yeah, that's my little fluffy story for the week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm more surprised Chicago's not on there because we have traffic all the time, no matter what, and we've been under construction for like 100 years on all of our streets or main streets. So it's traffic, man. It's brutal, especially commuting because you're in a rush to get to work, especially in like business. You usually have, a time you're supposed to be there by, and not just I mean, that's everywhere, right? If you're doing a job, you have a time you got to be there by, but like that morning stress of if you have like a morning meeting or something, and then that wanting to just be home or wherever you're going after, like that's real. And that is just top of mind while you're in that commute.
And like I said, I've been into Toronto, and I know people from Toronto that said there was days it would take up to 2 hours to commute because you'd have to catch a train. Then you'd have to like transfer and get onto a bus and then transfer from that to a different whatever, I mean, that's if you don't have a car and you're going into the city. But, and even like Calgary, Alberta, it's over 1 million people in that city. I've heard the same thing, an hour and a half just within the city. So I'm pretty lucky to work from home.
Yeah, me too. And when I do have to commute, I fucking hate it. I just, even in an Uber, I just don't like it.
Well, I work from my basement though, and there's not much vitamin D down here. So.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that.
Well, we're moving, new house. It's going to have a window upstairs.
Good. Yeah. Makes a difference. Does make a difference.
Well, I hope you liked that episode. Be sure to follow us and like us and ask us any questions or feedbacks or concerns. Watch the episodes on YouTube. Eyes Wide Open. I always want to say Eyes Wide Shut because of that stupid movie, but it's Eyes Wide Open on YouTube. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Have a good one, guys. Peace. This has been our mental health headline hot takes.
We're so glad you came.
Remember, when you heal yourself,
you heal the world.
Be sure to like this video, leave comments, and suggest articles for future episodes.
Hit subscribe to Eyes Wide Open
and Bunny Hugs and Mental Health.